He was questioned for about 9 hours. He was taken into custody at Falkirk Police Station about 9:13 a.m. yesterday, and was charged later on that evening, just the back of 6 o'clock, with, as you say, in connection with embezzlement. Police have been investigating the SNP's finances for almost 3 years now.
And the former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, who's been charged with embezzling funds from the party that governs Scotland, is understood to have resigned his party membership. Peter Murrell is the husband of Nicola Sturgeon, of course, the former First Minister. Let's get the latest then with the Times Scotland political correspondent, John Boothman. Very good morning to you, John.
Morning, Dermot. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Perhaps some in the SNP feeling less well about it. I mean, a dramatic day yesterday. Just talk us through developments.
Hugely significant developments yesterday, all over, of course, the papers, front pages, certainly in Scotland this morning. We were all taken a wee bit by surprise yesterday. Just before 5 o'clock, Police Scotland released a statement saying they had rearrested a 59-year-old man. He had, of course, been arrested, then released without charge the first time on the 5th of April last year. They said he was being questioned by detectives investigating the financing and funding of the SNP, that Operation Branchform investigation that started in July 2021. That man, of course, as you say, was Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the SNP, husband of Nicola Sturgeon. 2 hours later, about 7:20, they announced that he had been charged with embezzlement of SNP funds. He was released afterwards from Falkirk Police Station, where he'd been held in custody from 9 o'clock in the morning, and returned home back to his house at 8 o'clock last night. The party released a statement saying that he had resigned his membership of the SNP, but hugely significant story.
Do we know, are there any plans, I suppose you don't, whether there are any plans to re-interview Nicola Sturgeon or indeed Colin Beattie, the former SNP treasurer?
All we can say at this point, and the police emphasised this in the two statements they made yesterday, is that investigations are ongoing in relation to this whole case.
And the SNP reaction, fairly quiet, but have you heard anything from insiders?
Well, it's all very gloomy in the SNP at the moment, as you might imagine. We await the next steps in relation to Peter Murrell. The police will now send a report to the Procurator Fiscal. The Crown will then need to decide whether there's a prosecution or not, whether there's enough evidence to take that forward, and whether it's in the public interest to do so.
And is this investigation, as you say, it's been going on for several years now, is it having an effect, a measurable effect on the polling?
It's 2 years and 9 months since this investigation started, so as you say, it's been a very, very long time. Look, it's no secret more generally that the SNP has not had its troubles to seek. Humza Yousaf's had a pretty torrid time since his election last March. The polls are pretty poor. 3 polls last week showing that for the Westminster election, that Labour would come out in front of the SNP in terms of numbers of seats. The SNP's questioned almost constantly, relentlessly, for its competence in government. Its ability to make great, big, grand statements and its failure to deliver. So it's not really been a particularly good time for the SNP and for the First Minister himself.
And John, what about the core message, I suppose, the core purpose of the Scottish National Party? Are the numbers dropping in terms of support for Scottish independence?
Curiously, the numbers in support of Scottish independence are kind of what they've been for the past number of years. They're still up to half of people support Scottish independence. That having been said, though, as an issue of priority, even for SNP supporters, any of the polls in recent times would tell you that it's dropping further and further down the agenda as more and more people think the cost of living is more important, the NHS is more important. The big area to watch during the general election in Scotland is what those people who have supported independence in the past and supported the SNP will do in this election. Will they think it more important to stick with the SNP, or do they have a desire to get rid of the Tories and maybe move towards Labour? So those soft SNP independence voters are the people to watch during this election.
Interesting times, as the saying goes. Thanks for marking our card, John. That's John Boothman, the Times Scotland political correspondent.
We're turning our attention to the big political story that broke last night. The SNP has been urged to cooperate with the police investigation into the party's finances after its former chief executive, Peter Murrell, who is Nicola Sturgeon's husband, was charged in connection with embezzlement of funds. Kieran Andrews, the Times' Scottish political editor, has the very latest for us. Kieran, take us through what we know.
Well, yesterday, late afternoon, it emerged that Peter Murrell, who, as you say, former chief executive of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon's husband, was arrested by Police Scotland. He was questioned for about 9 hours. He was taken into custody at Falkirk Police Station about 9:13 a.m. yesterday, and was charged later on that evening, just the back of 6 o'clock, with, as you say, in connection with embezzlement. Police have been investigating the SNP's finances for almost 3 years now, part of Operation Branchform, a long-running investigation that has evolved over time. Sir Ian Livingstone, the former Chief Constable, saying it expanded beyond its original remit, which was to examine funds raised that the SNP said were for the purposes of an independence referendum. Now, Peter Murrell has been charged by the police. As yet, a report hadn't been sent to Scotland's prosecution service, so we have no details on whether prosecutors in Scotland will decide to continue the case. If they do, that means Peter Murrell will appear at court at some point, and we would probably get more details about the charges. Last year, Peter Murrell was arrested first time round more than a year ago. You'll remember the search that took place at his home that he shares with Nicola Sturgeon, the blue tents at the front. Nicola Sturgeon was later arrested, questioned, released without charge, as was Colin Beattie, the former SNP treasurer. Neither of them have been rearrested or re-interviewed as yet. Police Scotland says that the investigation is ongoing.
Kieran, just for people who aren't in Scotland, just to explain the legal process that because if we say in England, if we say someone's been charged, that is the start of the process. But there's extra layers. So is it essentially saying the police are saying they think there's grounds for charge, but there's another level to make that final decision?
Yes. So Police Scotland, the way it works, Police Scotland first of all bring charges against an individual. They then send a report to Scotland's prosecution service, who will decide effectively whether there are strong enough grounds for that prosecution to go ahead and to enter the court system. So we're through the first part of that, where Police Scotland have formally charged Peter Murrell, and they believe that there are grounds to take forward a criminal case against him. But the Crown Office, which is Scotland's prosecution service, is yet to make any ruling on whether they agree and whether, therefore, there will be any further legal action in this case against Peter Murrell.
Kieran, thanks so much for that. Kieran Andrews there, the Times' Scottish political editor. And as and when there are any more developments on that issue, we'll of course bring it to you here on Times Radio.